Family drama. The first story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not showing up to my dad's funeral after making him will me 50% of his assets as a condition to be there for his family? Basically, I stopped having a relationship with my dad after he ran off with another woman and had a bunch of kids with her. I was 13, old enough to choose, and decided to live with my mom full-time after I couldn't tolerate his girlfriend's presence anymore. I was a miracle pregnancy, conceived after 12 years of marriage and 8 years of trying, so I've no other sibling. They never did get married, but ended up having a couple of kids. The youngest is a toddler. I don't know them. I've never met them. 10 years later, I get a call from the girlfriend sobbing, claiming that my dad was sick and wanted to talk to me before he died. The a-hole wanted his family back again, minus the original wife, of course. My mom encouraged me to meet him one last time. So I talked to him over call and told him that I would show up and be with the family in his last days and after his passing, on the condition that he wills me 50% of the assets. I would only agree to meet with him in the presence of a lawyer, in an official capacity. He was desperate, so he agreed. I knew he would never give a single penny to my mom. So this was the only way for me to secure 25% of his estate from my mom. She worked her butt off to support him for 10 years, only to get discarded for a younger model. He agreed. I showed up to the meeting. The lawyer was present and the girlfriend kept sneering at me. I didn't care though. I walked out happy. And as my good luck would have it, my dad slipped into a coma 2 days later, never to wake up. His girlfriend kept calling and texting me to help her out with the funeral. I blocked her number. The other day, I ran into her at the bank. She confronted me and called me a horrible gold digger. According to her, I was the reason my dad was never happy and present for his new family. She also blamed me for all the problems in their relationship and that I betrayed my father in his deathbed. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Mom never got a fair settlement during the divorce. He hid assets, spent a fortune on his mistress, from the marital money in my college fund, and fake filed for bankruptcy. Now let's read the top comments. Everyone sucks here, but I'll tell you what, brother. If my dad had money, I'd do the same thing. Sister. Edit. Thank you, kind stranger, for the Yes Queen award. I don't feel like a queen, but I do have a better credit score, thanks to my emotional manipulation skills, so I'll accept the honor. You're entirely justified in what you did. Your absentee dad and his girlfriend figured you should be their dog's buddy and provide support to a family you've never met when he dies. Excuse me, what? Two grown-ups figured they'd manipulate a child despite 10 years of crappy parenting, and you manipulated a selfish man to give back to your mom. You made a hard choice, and you and your mom are gonna be better for it. Not the a-hole. Everyone sucks here, mildly. Your dad sucks for leaving your mom and choosing his new family over you. All those years with no contact, only for him to call you on his deathbed wanting to make things right. In my opinion, that's selfish. It was done just to give him peace of mind, not to apologize to you or mend your relationship. You and your mom are entitled to half of his assets, but you promised to be there for his girlfriend and your half-siblings in his last days and after his passing. Not honoring that promise sucks on your part too, but I can sense how much resentment you have for him and his new family, which is something I can't blame you for. I would probably feel the same way too. You know, on any post that I read which concerns a promise or request of a dead family member, it's usually said that honoring it doesn't really matter since the person is now dead. That they aren't going to know, and that why should it matter now? Sure, but in this case, the promise was made in the presence of one of the people affected who's still alive. The promise was made over a phone call. Dad tried to make me and a girlfriend hug it out awkwardly after the lawyer left. He thought he was reuniting his family. You gave his mind peace. That's pretty big of you. And perhaps you can be there, once they're older, for your half-siblings. You don't owe them anything, but when they're older, it might be a nice gesture, as their mother sounds like a piece of work. Not sure about that. I essentially ghosted him after I made sure I secured my bag. He slipped into coma 2 days later, but he did try to contact me after the visit. I didn't pick up his calls, nor did I reply to his messages. For the second story, am I an a-hole for not wanting to share the millionaire inheritance that my grandfather left just for me with my cousins and aunts? Before you need to understand who my grandfather was, so a short text to describe him. My grandfather had a very poor origin, but he moved up in the world. He led a peaceful and comfortable life. The few luxuries he gave himself was to travel to Italy, his country of origin, But he lived in a modest house in a good neighborhood, and I drove a BMW from the 80s. I know you said that it is not simple, but we are talking about a guy who was worth 8 digits in theory. This is important. Had 4 companies and employed 500 people. He could live much higher than he did. He did not spoil his children or his grandchildren, but he always made sure to pay everyone the best education and presented his 3 children, 2 women, 1 man, with a good home when they got married. My grandfather never let relatives work at his companies, including his children and grandchildren. He said that everyone should follow their own paths and always made it clear to never wait for his inheritance. He made it clear that he would choose the person who proved to be more able to handle his business and money. This created a discreet competition in which everyone tried to show the best to take on the business. I am the youngest grandson. I am 28. The oldest is 45. We are a total of 10 grandchildren, plus my aunts. My father passed away a few years ago. My grandmother passed away a little after. Here comes my question. My grandfather died about 4 months ago and left everything to me. And what surprised us the most was that he had a lot more than we thought. He had 9 digits, which confirmed my theory that there are wealthy people who never appear in Forbes lists. And that, of course, caused fights and arguments with my cousins and aunts about sharing the money with them. Should I share? After all, everyone knew what my grandfather wanted. Now let's read the top comments for this post. Not the a-hole, as that's what your grandfather wanted. They are more than likely going to contest the will in court and may get a settlement which will be a small portion of the whole. Sounds like your grandpa, though well-intended, was the a-hole. If I ever made millions, I'd make sure to set up my children and grandchildren for life with whatever business they wanted to go into, including if they wanted to work with me. I understand where he came from, so I'm sure he just never really came to terms with how very much he had to share. Personally, I would share, but it really is your decision. Not the a-hole. You're free to do as you see fit. Not the a-hole. It's all yours. Enjoy. Tell everyone else to go pound sand. No one should even be asking you or demanding anything. Just because of that, you should do nothing. Rule of thumb when inheriting money, sit in it for at least a year, so you don't make any rash decisions. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my dad it's not my job to make things equal? I, 20 female, grew up with a blended family. My parents divorced when I was 4, my father remarried when I was 8, and I lost my mom when I was 10, and had to live with my dad's family. My stepmom and I have always had a tricky relationship. In the early days, she tried to compete with my mom and was very territorial when my mom was around, like trying to force me to hold her hand and always trying to move things along if I saw my mom and went up to hug her. She forced hugs with me then, when exchanges would happen, if it was in front of my mom and didn't take no for an answer. I resented the hell out of her. Then my mom died and it was a crappy 2 years after. My stepmom was hurt I hadn't wanted her at the funeral. She was hurt that I wasn't enthusiastic about living with them. I wanted to do the same 50-50 with my dad and maternal grandparents, who were a huge part of my life up to that point. It got a little easier. I have never really cared much for her, but after a while, I did try to be nicer and more inclusive, but I never given my relationship with her as much effort as I did with my parents. This has apparently bothered her, and recently, she brought up how much effort I used to put into making gifts and cards for my mom when she was alive. She actually kept track of that stuff, and how I would always buy her a card and get her something generic for gifts. Apparently, this has always bothered her, and is why she competed so much. She also pointed out I never made an effort for Mother's Day with her. That it was obvious, I didn't want to celebrate her on that day. The truth is, Mother's Day has not been a celebratory day for me since I lost my mom. It's just a day where I'm reminded of my loss. Even a decade later, it still feels that way. Especially when I see friends post with their moms and stuff. Anyway, things really soured between us after she brought this stuff up. And yesterday, my dad told me that I should try to make things more equal because it hurts her feelings. And she's been in my life long enough to have earned the same effort I used to put in with my mom. I told him it was not my job to help her compete with my dead mom. And it wasn't my job as a kid to keep things equal between them. Am I the a-hole? Now let's read the top comments. Gross, gross, gross. This is the stepmom version of that thing where men think women are vending machines, where you put compliment tokens in and get S out. They are treating you like she is entitled to you putting out for her in the way she wants because she put parenting tokens in. You don't owe a close relationship to anyone, not anyone in the world. Close relationships happen when both people want them. If one person doesn't want it, then that should be respected. The fact this woman is incapable of respecting this, that she couldn't even respect it for a child who was grieving the loss of her real mother, is the whole damn reason you don't like her, not the a-hole. And it doesn't seem like she put in valid parenting tokens either. She was trying to shove the tokens in as hard as she could, despite the error messages in the first few years. It seems like she eventually stopped shoving them in a handful at a time, and just started forcing them in one by one, or even trying to make the machine take bent and messed up parenting tokens. So, she got a bent and messed up relationship with her stepdaughter. This is nobody's fault but her own, and maybe the dad since he didn't stop her. Not the a-hole, OP. Not the a-hole. You can't force a child to love you, and she definitely pushed you away when she tried competing with your mom when you were little. It's not your fault you two aren't close, it's hers, for trying to alienate you from your biological mom. I'm so sorry for your loss. I hope everything is well and wish you all the best. Hell to the no. You are not the a-hole. My mom is never replaceable. If my stepmom is getting something generic, she should appreciate the fact that she is being acknowledged. But does she have kids of her own? Yes, she has 3 kids with my dad. Then do not worry about it. She is a grown woman. But my mom taught me to be the better person. I'm not going to tell you how. It's not your job to make things equal. It's in your hands to see what you can do to make your dad happy if you want him in your life. He is the real blood after all. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for accepting my step-family when my bio brother did not, and he was shunned for it? My father cheated on my bio mom and abandoned us to marry my current stepmom when I was 12 and my brother was 14. He was frankly an absent father and I didn't miss him much, but my mom didn't have an easy time raising us as a single parent. She died 2 years later from an overdose when I was 14. We subsequently moved to and lived with my father's new family, comprising my stepmom and her 2 sons, 2 and 3 years older than me. Going into this, both me and my bio brother hated both of them, with the view that my dad was a cheating, unreliable scumbag and she was just a cheap witch. I wasn't expecting to actually like my stepmom, though we were right about my father. Past the first few months of awkwardness, my stepmom and brothers actually treated me great. They always wanted a daughter and sister respectively and quickly started including me in their family activities and looking out for me. My stepbrothers are also genuinely nice people, and I am so lucky to have them in my life. My bio brother, on the other hand, didn't take the move well and started acting out, /skipping school, /getting in trouble with the law. He didn't participate in family activities and moved out as soon as he could. Recently, I met my brother and he told me that he blamed me for jumping ship so quickly and not sticking with him. He felt that I betrayed our mom and him. He said that if I didn't accept his family too, my dad would probably have packed us off to live with our uncle in a different state, and he wouldn't have had to go through his crappy teenage years almost alone. I'm 20 now, and I've always felt guilty about so quickly accepting them and leaving my brother behind. Meeting my brother only cemented this. Should I have not so quickly accepted my stepmom and brothers? Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. No a-holes here. He lost his mom super young and is allowed to have complicated feelings about that. He shouldn't be blaming you for anything and maybe should be in counseling to deal with that. It's an emotional situation and I really see both sides here. The dad is an a-hole for sure. I think the stepmom and the stepbros also might be, because Sophie said they treated her well because they've always wanted a daughter and sister. They may have not treated a bio brother as well as they did OP because they had no use for him, making him feel like an outcast and driving a wedge between OP and him. I feel sorry for the poor kid. No a-holes here, except your father. You were both kids. You were able to find a positive in a crappy situation. Your brother was not. It is easier to blame you than it is to accept the reality that this situation is not really anyone's fault. It is unfair that he wants to drag you down into his life of misery as well. No a-holes here. It is a hard situation all round, and the way that society tends to treat the emotions of young men, I doubt he was ever given the support he needed by the adults around him. It doesn't make him right to be hurt by your acceptance of your stepfamily, but it does explain his anger towards the situation in general. I was struck by something, though. You said that after a few months you accepted them as they treated you well because they always wanted a daughter/sister. Forgive me if this is wildly off the mark, But it is possible that that acceptance was for you alone, and your brother, especially as he was already 16, was seen as an inconvenience at best, well before he started acting out. I say this because he mentioned being almost alone. It is possible that your stepbrothers froze him out while embracing you, driving an increasing wedge between you two, especially if he had been in the position of having to look after you beforehand and was suddenly pushed into the cold by the move, with him perceiving you as choosing people he felt he needed to protect you from. If that is the case, that wouldn't make either of you wrong for what you've done. You were teenagers. Even now you're still young. Regardless, I would suggest having a full, open, honest, and vulnerable discussion with him about it, if you are both alright with the idea. And that's it for this video, folks. As always, comment, like, and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on your notifications to get updated on the latest videos. I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.